Jim's going to talk to us about channeling.
Well, you can just call me Father Jim. So I'll give Rose acknowledgement. So I was told I could suggest music. That makes some sense. So I started looking for music. That's not easy, as far as I can see. The internet has I don't know how many millions of songs. But when you look for spiritual songs and so forth, well, you can find some. Look for a song that involves channeling. Good luck. So when I talked to Rose, I said, well, you know, my topic's going to be this, and if you happen to come across anything, and you didn't respond right away, but she had this song that she was still working on, that she must have been receiving enlightenment to let me know that a little later, oh, by the way, I have this song, I'm going to email you, that she pulled together. Now, was that meant to be or what?
Yeah, amazing.
Perfect. So, there's all sorts of things I'd love to talk about in this group, including channeling, and I realize, for the most part, I'm preaching to the choir. So, not sure what additional information I'll give you, but I pulled things together, and let's see how it goes. And you let me know when it's 12:30. So I'm going to start out by, how do we communicate? It's kind of an important thing for all we humans on the planet. And it's interesting what has happened to we humans. Maybe just 100 years ago, you might sit in a living room and some people might have had a radio, but the communication was pretty much face-to-face, and the words that come out and so forth. Now it's Facebook to Facebook. And a variety of other kinds of things like texting, FaceTime, emailing, phoning, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Skype, WhatsApp, on. Many, many choices of how we can all communicate with each other. Well, my observation is we still lack in the ability to communicate in important ways. It worries me about maybe the next generations. One interesting way that we communicate, oddly enough, is nonverbal. Now, the nonverbal is all those things I just mentioned, other than phoning. But we have feelings when we look at each other's eyes. It's a nonverbal communication. So, the other thing I want to point out, that the communication that we go through is substantially invisible. I don't have the experience. I never say I don't have the ability, because we all have abilities. Just we're still trying to find them. But I do know people that I've met that can communicate with every one of these plants. They can give you the personality. They can tell you what the plant will do for you, health-wise or whatever, and all those trees out there. And everything that's in nature, we could actually communicate with. So that's in that world that I like to pursue. So historically, in that other kind of world, we get into areas of people that have really unique abilities to communicate beyond the normal. So historically, referring to a Bible, these people were often called prophets. And they had some ability to predict the future, so forth. But to me, they were early recognized psychics that could bring exceptional knowledge from a different dimension to this world and tell people. Now, over the centuries, a whole lot of people got in trouble for doing that. Today, we live in a different world where much of this is accepted. Maybe not so much understood by the majority of the human race, but today I don't think you're going to find many people being burned at a stake in other ways because they have this exceptional ability to communicate. So that brings us to the topic, channeling. So what is channeling? Well, first I started with Wikipedia and such. So this says, the practice of channeling a person's body being taken over by a spirit for the purpose of communication, and it has been around for millennia. Okay, so that's what goes out to the universe of anyone that wants to read what's channeling. Having had the conversation about this with different people, and I can tell there's a lot of confusion about just bringing up the subject. This goes on to say the most famous American writer channeler was Jane Roberts, who channeled an ancient and wise entity named Seth. And that's Jane Roberts. It's one of the early books that I read. Anybody know where Jane Roberts lived?
Yeah, Elmira.
I told you
Elmira.
it was the choir.
I had friends who used to go be with her in her
And
living
I've met
room.
other people here that
Yeah, and
went-
Abraham and Hicks started in their living room and so on. And I have friends who, and they all used to give me their cassettes. So I had one friend who knew her, and then I had another friend who knew Abraham and Hicks and sent me cassettes. I still have a few cassettes left from all of them. Yeah.
So, there are a number of books. And what commonly happens with the variety of books I'm aware of and the people that channel, they had no idea they had the ability. It sort of happens. And then the husband says, well, do some more of that. And he recorded and so forth. And she just went on and on and on. But it took quite a while for her to become comfortable receiving these channeled messages. Her channeling covers a wide range of what it's all about. So if you picked any particular book to pick up, this is a really good one, any one of her books. So let's try another one. Let's try another very common one.
Koi. Yep.
Yeah.
It's the law of attraction. Abraham Hicks. So this is another woman that, it's like zap. You had your intention to do this. She's still doing it. She travels all over the world. She's got a phenomenal following. Her husband did a lot of the work with her and so forth, and then he passed away just a couple years ago.
He did.
And
But she-
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Oh,
She
I didn't know
continues.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can go on the internet and get a daily reading regarding the law of attraction. And these are just short paragraphs with phenomenal wisdom. It's all from another source. And this Neil Donald Walsh guy. So his first 3 books sold many, many, many copies. And then he continued with I don't know how many books. And he speaks all over the place.
He does. Yeah.
But, I mean, I hadn't come across any book that said somebody's talking directly with God. So this is quite a shocker to the general public because he's so well known that, I'll just say general public, is aware of these books, whether they read them or not. Now, the wisdom in the books is really pretty phenomenal. But as I read them, I just read the first 3, and all the time I said, well, if I was talking to God, I would be asking this and this. And so that's part of why I was having a little trouble. Why didn't he ask the really deep, serious questions? Maybe he did later. And we have this one, which feels like a Bible. Course in Miracles. Okay, so this has been around for the public since the 80s. It sold over 2 million copies, and I don't think the book ever says the intention of this is for every little group of people to get together and do the book. Because you can make any number of people that have the book, tried to read it, and gave up. It's really meant for a group to have discussion. So there's been a discussion group just down the hall for I don't know how many years. The last 10 years. Personally, I've been in 4 groups, and I've visited 2 others since the 90s. And our group brings a different energy. And it seems every group seems to have somebody that can interpret better than the rest, and that helps. It's not meant to be that confusing. It could be easier to read, but and it's comprised of 3 books actually. But most groups, the big part of the middle is what they go through, and it's written such that almost every paragraph is the same size. Everybody in the circle reads a paragraph. And the conversation could happen after every paragraph or not, doesn't matter.
Don't want to interrupt, but I will plug right now the group that meets down the hall, Wednesday nights. We just started the manual for teachers, and the new facilitator is Dr. Arthur Stokes.
Okay.
What time?
We meet at 6:30, the study starts at 7.
What day
And
again, did you say?
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesdays.
the facilitator is
Dr. Stokes.
our son.
Terry moved to Florida.
And I want to plug the other course meeting is Monday mornings. I go to that one at either Joyce Haber's house or the Gilligans at 9:30, and the facilitator is Edmund Cotton.
Okay.
So we have a nice group there that meets.
It's,
When is the Neil Donald Walsh? Do they still do that course in Riverview? I mean,
Yeah,
the
Thursday night.
Conversation?
That was
Thursday
I'm
night.
not too
Thursday
sure
night.
if they're still doing
Yeah, I
it.
think so. They might be.
All right.
There is no study.
So I have many things like this that are generally not printed. They're in my computer. I have hundreds of channelings. I save the ones that I think are important. And I've been doing this I was saving on the computer for like the last 8 years. So there are all sorts of people that channel, and it's in the internet. When they say everything is in the internet, pretty much so. That's incredible.
Stuff you don't want in there.
So this woman's name is Natalie Lessons, and she channels many sources. But I picked this one because she says, through her source channeling, it's a natural communication between a human and an aspect of the Creator that can be expressed in numerous ways. A channel is a tube or funnel of light formed at the crown chakra, which supports heightened sensitivity to the divine, insights, sacred guidance, which is beyond the earthly reality, as well as the ability of the channel. Who can channel? Everyone has the ability. It is simply to express the Creator through your body, mind, and emotions. So I was after a simple definition. Next, I'm going to go to this particular source. Okay, the source is Jesus. And I'll tell you that there are many people that channel Jesus. So I'm going to just read a couple parts of this, and it'll tell you who the channeler is. It has only been in recent earth time, this is him speaking, of course, that we are able to communicate to the whole world through channelings and their translations to reach thousands of people who are still behind the veil. 3 things have occurred to make this wonderful experience possible. The invention of the internet. If you think about that. If they really want to communicate with, if the results of the channelings, if they want that to get out to many people, it's pretty hard to beat the internet. The internet, which allows instantaneous transfer of information around the globe and to thin the veil, which not only allows more of you to channel, but also makes it more believable to you that we actually come through to speak to you. Thirdly, the fulfillment of a soul contract on the part of our dear Catherine, who has spent long years in preparation and training to become what we call the clearest channel on the planet. So her name is Catherine May. Her career has been as a psychologist in New York City, and I think she's in her 80s. She is Jesus' favorite. So I'll tell you a little more. In a previous lifetime, she was Mary Magdalene. That could be another subject. He says, I entrusted my new scriptures to her because every word she was writing down are my own. When we, the ascended masters, which he is, and archangels choose to bring messages to you, we consult with each other. We decide who will reserve the time and energy of the channel, who is most able to carry the message with clarity. Okay.
That's Catherine May.
So, I read his new scriptures. I had heard quite one time ago through something or read that Jesus did write kind of a Bible, or pieces that could be put in the Bible, and that they still exist, and that they would be found someday. And then later I read that they could be found not too far from now. So I'm figuring, okay, maybe the Dead Sea Scrolls. They just have to dig in the desert a little more. Never occurred to me that new scriptures don't have to be paper. They can be channelings. So I can tell you that I have read 33 chapters of his new scriptures, and they're all on the internet. He waited until this was January 7th, 2014, to channel through Catherine his autobiography. Now now all these pages describe, I'm not going to cover all this, but just a little bit. I would like to tell the story of my life as Jesus. I am actually Sananda Kumara. So in the realm of beyond us, he's known as Sananda. This is my spiritual name, my soul name. When I came to earth, I was given the name Yeshua ben Joseph, which you might have heard. But those who knew me when I was young called me Emmanuel. Okay, so any song you heard with Emmanuel, there's Jesus. Okay, that's how I was going to, that's a teaser. That's for a future talk. Unless you go to the internet and then you'll see what it's all about. So, I have kept track. I decided like 8 years ago, I'm going to keep track of these things. They cover many topics, but in terms of channeling, it's gotten to be roughly 200 channelers that I'm aware of. And they channel, I just wrote down a few things, or a few people, Archangel Michael and many, many, many archangels, other angels, Saint Germain, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, many ascended masters, Mother, Father, God, Prime Creator, celestial beings, it goes on and on and on. I made 10 copies of who these people are, who they channel, and who they are. For the most part, you can just Google the name, and you can receive any of them. Many of them have websites and so forth. To keep within my time limit, I'll jump to this one. Okay, so we read these books and so forth, and unless you have actually had a spirit, someone show up in your bedroom and start talking to you, I think we all have a little veil, skepticism. Could this really be real? And I keep that skepticism, and maybe it's why I keep reading a lot of stuff. I look for coincidences. I look for messages that seem to make sense from different sources. This is 30 pages of a lot of typing that was channeled to a woman who lives in a wheel. And she shared this with me. So I haven't shared this with anyone. but we got a conversation going. I said, would you mind giving it to me? So this came to her through automatic writing. And she wrote, and she was told that you have to be more aggressive or whatever. You have to type it, because people can't read your writing. She says, well, they kept telling me to type it, so she did. She types with 2 fingers and all that. This is amazing. This cover, you don't need any other book. What she channeled. So I'll just read this little bit. This is the beginning. This is May of 1997. Your path in life indicates it must go somewhere. Your destiny is a constant choice. You're given certain criteria, certain characteristics when you were born. You brought with you yourself, your you. The self-you is whole and perfect no matter what you do in this physical reality. We don't get told often enough or ever that we're perfect. Tell yourself that every so often. The real you is perfect because you are, I'll say, a piece of God. Another topic. You may deceive yourself into believing you have no control and are a victim of life. You have all the control. You may be influenced by the reality you have chosen, but ultimately you have the core of the self, your inner knowledge, to return to. Destiny exists if you but understand there is no predesigned circumstance awaiting you. You create your course of events. Do not look upon your life's successes to judge performance. You may not know what play and script has been written to fulfill. It's just amazing stuff.
Is she channeling somebody in particular? Or just the universe?
I don't know. I don't know that she knows.
Actually, most channelers are a collective group. It seems that no one stands alone, which is even including Jesus. So it's very interesting. And I was told by Mayor Baba, who in India is considered as Jesus in his time, when he appeared here on the earth. I actually went to a place that is unknown to people unless you happen to come there. It's in North Carolina. It's a very rural area that I happened to, upon myself through walking, found. But they said I was a conscious channeler, so if you ask me a question, I can download things. And that I did with a collective as Jesus and everyone. It seems that you have a group. You never are alone in any one instance. So you're many people in one, I'm many people in one, but as a collective group, even Jesus had those that were with him and advisors and so on. And so it's an interesting concept. But they called me a conscious channeler because of some things that occurred while I was there. And that's what they told me about. Angels also are not wings. They don't have wings, real angels, which is also another thing which I was visited by an angel. And then when I explained what it looked like, they said, well, it's like that burning bush. It's quite scary and quite fiery and a lot of energy coming in. And it was revealed to you when I told them what happened to me. So it's very interesting that when you are or become a channeler like Seth, like Jane, like my friends knew Jane, everything becomes so wide open that it is almost like your personality is broken in a million pieces, because everything you're taught and everything you believe is completely shattered. It's like starting from the ground up again. And that's what also happened with me as a child, my near-death experience. That's on YouTube, because of the reason that every foundation is like pulled from under you, and it's starting anew. So it's very interesting. And all of them, I think, had those experiences as well. It totally changed their lives, the channelers.
I've been pursuing answers, as I really gave it a lot of thought, since I was about that big. I used to ask myself, why adults don't just give us the answer? Well, after a while you figure out they have no clue what the answer is. Through all of this, substantially the channelings, I have phenomenal peace of mind. I've had answers to every kind of question I could ever imagine. And the more I read, I get more information that I should have asked those questions. So it's, maybe I'm encouraging everyone to pursue these kind of things.
I was going to say, according to Charles Fillmore, we're all individualizations of one divine mind, and we are connected to that source. And in that regards, our channeling comes through what I consider, and what many of us consider, a Holy Spirit, and that is what this woman was saying in the first few paragraphs of her channeling, is that we are perfect. Our true self is the perfect individual source of the divine, and we're connected to it.
I would think every religious leader that's ever been on this planet has been a channeler.
Yeah, and it's all in the 5 principles of unity.
And, okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And now we have our blessings of prayer requests.
We're all connected.
Yes, we are.
I like that.
Why the days unfold like an unstoppable water
Wonderful.
So